Okay, we are going to continue on. Whoops, lost my picture there for a second. We're going to continue on working example problems out of the solving multi-step equation problem set. And I'm going to work 12 and 13 in this video. So we're working problems 12 and 13. And so if you'll go ahead and get that out, just pause the video, bring up those problems, and then we'll get started. Okay, now I've got number 12 on the board already, and you've either copied it down or you've went ahead and worked it, and you're going to check it. But what I'm going to do is go ahead and go through the process of solving this thing. Now, the first thing I tell my students to do is to see if you can simplify each side before you start trying to take numbers from one side or the other. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if there are any like terms I can add, and are there any other things I can do before I start solving the equation. So it's just simplification, then we start to solve. All right, the right side is about as simple as you can get. I mean, you just have the number 9. Over here, you have a couple of terms inside parentheses. So let's see if we can go ahead and add or subtract them. All right, well, this one is just a number, and this one is a variable with a coefficient in front of it. All right, so you can only add variables to other like variables, and you can only add numbers with numbers. So you can't really do that subtraction. But I'll tell you what you can do here. You see that negative out in front? If you think about a negative as being a -1, see that right there? That thing is multiplying the parentheses of that expression. And there is a property that we can use to multiply something outside the grouping symbol times every part inside. And can anyone, whoops, had a little mark there. Can anyone tell me what that property is? Let me pop some arrows here and see if it reminds you. Okay, think about that. I'm multiplying that -1 times both pieces. What property would that be? Starts with a D. Distributive property, okay? The distributive property allows us to multiply things that are outside parentheses times things that are inside parentheses. So let's go ahead and let's multiply that -1 times the 7, okay? -1 times the 7. All right, -1 times +7 gives us a -7. All right, now I'm going to multiply a negative number times a negative number. -1 times -4 times x. Negative times negative gives me positive. 1 times 4 is 4, and then you're multiplying that x. So it's 4x here, okay? Whoops. And don't forget to drop down the equal sign and the 9, okay? So now we're ready to start solving. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and ask you to get your eyes up on the screen so you can pay attention and, kind of get a little bit of a review while we're in here before we take the tour of the building. So I have a -7. It's a number. I have a 4x. That's a variable expression. So I can't add them. So what I'm going to do now, when you solve, you get the variable by itself. And I've said that over and over in the other videos. So to get x alone on the left side of the equation, we have to move the -7 and the 4 to the other side by doing the opposite of how they're attached to the variable. Okay, so this -7 is being added to this expression. So let's think about this. Let's add the opposite of -7. What would be the opposite of a -7? +7. So underneath the numbers on both sides of the equation, see there's a left side over here and a right side over here. You can draw a line through the equal signs if you want to. We can add those up. And when you add a number and its opposite, they drop out. They become 0, okay? Anything else drops down. So you have 0 plus 4x equals 9 plus 7, which is 16, all right? Well, that 0 plus 4x is just going to be 4x. So I could probably just not have dropped it down at all. I mean, anytime I have numbers that are cross out, I don't call it canceling. I'm not really crazy about that term, but they add it up to 0, and we don't really have to. Once we add 0 to 4x, we get 4x. All right. Now the last number that's over there with the variable is 4. See, 16 is already on the other side of the equation. We don't have to mess with 16. But the 4 is right up there, up in our variables grill, right up there in its face, and we want to make it move. And just like the opposite of adding a -7 was adding a +7, we're multiplying by that 4. Whenever you have a number and a variable together, it's implied multiplication. So do the opposite of multiply. What's the opposite of multiplying by 4? Dividing by 4. Okay. Now you're probably saying, well, why do you want to do that? Well, I want to do that because 4 divides into 4 how many times? 1 time. 1 times x is x. And so now we have x equals whatever 16 divided by 4 is. And again, if you're great with your multiplication tables, you'll probably know that answer. If you're not, you should probably have a little calculator handy. There is a TI-84 calculator app for our Chromebooks, and I'll put a link up in the classroom stream before too long so you can try to get that done and put that. And then you'll have your own little TI-84 that's just 1 tab away. So when you divide 4 into 16, the answer is 4. We box up our answer, and there you go. Okay, so there you have it. You have x equals 4, and we're done. How do we know we're done? The variable's by itself. All the numbers are on the other side. That's the definition of solving an equation, getting the variable by itself. Okay, you may want to pause, take a rest, but whatever. But we're going to go ahead and begin on the second problem, which is problem 13. Okay, there's problem 13. 13, can we simplify the left side first? I can't add numbers and variables together. So we're stuck with this -18 subtract 6k. Boy, that looks awful, doesn't it? But I'll tell you what we can do on the right side. We can see if we can add inside the parentheses. Nope, number and variable, can't add them. But we do have a 6. Uh-oh, tells me I need to change to my layer here, the right one. I'll tell you what we can do. We can recognize that 6 is multiplying what's in the parentheses. And so we're going to distribute that 6 between those two pieces, and that's why they call it the distributive property. Okay? All right. So we'll do that, and our left side of our equation will just drop down until we can get to it. So I've got -18 minus 6k. I almost put an x there. Now, 6 times 1 is 6. See, that's that first arrow. 6 times 1. And then I'm going to multiply 6 times a positive 3k. 6 times 3 times k. 6 times 3 is 18 with a k. So that's going to be positive 18k. All right? So there we go. Now, what makes this one tough? Can anybody tell me? What makes the second step go, oh, that still doesn't look easy. It still looks really hard. What about this problem makes it still look difficult? Could it be the fact that you have a -6k on the left and an 18k on the right? It's hard to solve an equation when you got variables on both sides because no matter what side you move the numbers to, there's still a variable over there. And solving means getting the variables on one side and getting the numbers on the other. So what we're going to do, we're going to pick either the -6k or the positive 18k, and we're going to move one or the other to the other side. And we're going to do it by either adding or subtracting. Now, if you don't want to have a negative in front of your variable, move the smaller one, the one that has the less value. Well, obviously a negative has less value. See that -6k right there? A negative has less value than a positive. -6k has less value than an 18k. So I'm going to move it. So can anyone tell me what the opposite of subtraction is? It would be what? The opposite of subtracting a number would be what? Addition. Absolutely correct. So to move the -6k, I'm going to do the opposite 6k to all the k's on both sides, all right? And there should really only be the -6k on one side and the 18k on the other. If there's other k's out there, we should have added all like terms first, okay? But it was obvious that you couldn't do that from this problem, all right? So a -6k and a positive 6k add up to 0, and 0 added to -18 is -18. Over here, the 6 drops down, the plus sign drops down, and if I have 18 k's and I have 6 more k's, how much would I have? Well, K's just stand for something. Let's set it stand for dollars. If I have $18 and I get $6 more, how many dollars would I have? Anybody know? 18 plus 6 would be what? 24K. 24K. Uh-oh. I hit a button and caused my problem to scroll. I'm going to scroll that problem over a little bit, give myself some room here. So that should be, I think I said 24K. And there we are. Now at least we have our variable over here on the right side. And now we know we need to move our numbers away from it. So all the numbers on the right side are going to get moved to the left, and then we'll have it solved. You don't have to have your variable on the left side. That's a common misconception people get somehow in math. So let's move this positive 6. What's the opposite of a positive 6? Opposite of a positive is a negative. And in this case, negative 6. Yeah. So when you have a positive 6 and a negative 6, they drop out, they add up to 0, and that's going to leave our plus 24K. Okay? And that's going to be equal to whatever negative 18 and negative 6 are. So if I lost $18 and I lost $6 more, I would have lost a total of how many? 24. And because I lost them, I have to say that that's a negative instead of a positive. Anytime you lose your own money, it is a negative. I'll tell you that. So anyway, our problem is now positive 24 times K equals negative 24. How do I get rid of a 24 that's multiplying? What's the opposite of multiplication? What operation is opposite of multiplication? Can you tell me? It's division. You're absolutely right. So put a division bar underneath both sides and divide by the number you're moving, which is positive 24. All right. So boom, you're almost done. So the 24 is on the right side, divide out, leaving K. Uh-oh. I used red, but I'm going to go ahead and just go over it with black here. And so the 24s drop out, and you're left with K on the right, and a 24 will go into 24 one time, but that's a negative, so you end up with negative 1. You're dividing a negative by a positive. All right. So box it up, and there's your answer. So if you go back and look at how many problems we've probably got, this is our 4th video on this problem set. So out of the 20 problems that you're working, you're going to have a bunch of them that are already worked out. And so you can check them. You can work along with the video. However your style is, you're going to be able to do that. So anyway, this is Coach Smith, and I'll see you in class.